Hello, I'm John McFarlane, Head of Creator Engagement, and welcome to the Sea of Thieves official podcast, episode 2. First off, thank you for making episode 1 the most successful of our podcasts ever. So yeah, thank you very much for that. It's good to hear that you enjoy listening to the insights and some of the banter that we've got going here. And who is on the Banter Bus this week? Well, we've got our regulars here. Christina McGrath, who's Head of Community. Mike Chapman, Creative Director. Joe Neat, Executive Producer. And our 2 guests for this week, Shelley Preston, Lead Designer, and Andrew Preston, Lead Designer. Long time no see. But before we get started, I just want to let people know that if you are listening to this, and we know there's a lot of you who listen to it on the reputable podcast app, then you might want to go over and see our faces on YouTube. So that's Sea of Thieves, youtube.com/Sea of Thieves. And lastly, Christina will be slinging questions over from the community, from the people who have been using the hashtag SOT podcast between the last time we showed a podcast and now. So if you do want your questions answered for the next podcast, and we'll be talking about what topics we'll be covering there closer to the end, then please use the hashtag SOT podcast on any social media. And anyway, let's go on with it. How is everybody?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Who's driving the Banter
last
Bus? John, who's driving the Banter Bus? Right, is it you?
Me, yeah.
Okay.
The front. It's a pretty pathetic horn, but we need to upgrade the Banter Bus. I need that as a button on my switch thing here, my switchboard. But the
Banter Bus beep.
Banter
The whole,
Bus,
yeah, the whole, yeah.
the Banter Bus beep, and then at any point anyone can go Banter Bus beep, and I've got it.
The community rolls their eyes at that one, I think. Get on board.
But Andy, Shelley, we haven't seen you in ages. Where have you been?
Right here.
Where are
No,
Sandy?
we've been very busy on some very exciting stuff that we can't talk about yet, but we can't wait until we can.
So, and how is Mike,
Is
Joe,
Andy
Christina? I think Andy's muted.
Yeah, I think we
He is
forgot where
muted.
Andy was. He was on.
Believe
He's been on
it or
mute
not,
for a while.
they're actually not on the same.
Very
So,
good.
can you
Hello?
confirm?
Hello? Yeah, he's back. He's
Hello.
back.
I'm
He's
back.
back. Here he is.
Hey, I'm good, thanks. I've been in my house for the last year. A global pandemic.
Famously.
You're not really missed much.
Yeah, that does, Mike. You were saying there that does look like one long sofa.
It does.
That they're both. You're both
Can
on
you
there.
confirm it's not the same sofa, is it? That you said?
Not the same sofa, but we, have a theming that goes throughout the whole house. Not really. It's not that good. We just happen to have the same sofa in 2 different rooms.
I'm downstairs, Shelley's upstairs.
Right.
Why are you downstairs, Andy?
I just fancy the West Wing, really.
We were saying earlier that you're like the Richard and Judy of Rare, aren't you? And the sofa's
No, that one before.
back that up even more.
No comment.
I'm not really sure what you're saying there, Mike.
So it's a good thing. Everyone loves Richard and Judy, don't they?
Are you going to
No,
start?
actually.
Are you going to start a book
Well,
club
what
soon? What is that?
You need a cooking segment of the podcast. See if he's
Yeah.
recipes.
I've just got to collect some posts.
Are you serious? Straight into the live unboxing. Unless it's a bill, we won't open that. Or a court order, hopefully, or a unless it's from the police, we won't open it. Because we're speeding, everyone.
So, well, Andy's away. Mike, Joe, Christina, what you been up to?
I had to take my
Not
washing
long.
in just about 20 minutes ago because it was sunny at the start of the day and now it's raining. And that's probably the most boring thing I've said today. So you're welcome. I saved it for the podcast.
And Joe?
Not a great deal, I'll be honest. No, I've got nothing. I've got nothing.
You've had 5 weeks to prepare for this one question at the start?
Yeah. Just
Mike?
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to that stage of development now where a lot of the features that we've been working on for quite some time are being polished and iterated upon and balanced. So yeah, in the fog of war at the moment, like in the fire at the
But a
moment.
very exciting fog, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of work still to do. But yeah, a lot of the things that we've been working on for some time are playing really well, and it's got that kind of unexpected magic that we've always wanted in a Sea of Thieves features. So very excited when we get to announce some of the stuff that we've been working on for future seasons. But yeah, that's all I can say really. Other than that, same old, same old. We're all at home working hard. But yeah, lots of things that have been burning for some time are coming to completion now. So very excited to share. Hopefully on a future podcast.
Nice.
That was a nice evasive answer.
Because that was a nice future podcast.
I got my jab at the weekend because I'm old.
Oh, you got
So
yeah.
I did.
Wow.
And it wiped me out for like 2 days. It was brutal. But yeah.
Solid day.
Yeah, 2 solid days.
But now you're like the Hulk and can transform at any point.
I haven't tried, but hopefully I won't give it a go for the first time on the podcast.
Don't make me angry.
That poster was for you, by the way, Shelley, not for me. So I'm super
Sorry to disappoint.
But we did say that we were going to be covering hot topics, and not ones to shy away from a hot topic. The first one we're gonna go for is PvP versus PvE. So, what is the design philosophy of Sea of Thieves, especially regarding catering to those different play styles, and then potentially having a scenario where they collide on a server? And I'm going to go for Mike to start this, but then feel free to take over.
Well, that is the podcast over, because that's at least 2 hours worth of content. So I'll try and keep it succinct as possible, and I'll try and explain it from why that is cool to the vision of Sea of Thieves. So, I guess at the heart of Sea of Thieves, the core vision and the experience that we've always wanted to create is around players creating stories together. Everyone in the community's heard us say that so many times. So that's where we started before it even became a pirate experience with crews of players on ships having adventures in this world. So when you then take that core vision that we had, and then the natural fit and the complementary fit of, okay, I'm a pirate in this world, I'm with my friends, we feel like we're in a crew together in how we're bonded in using the ships in our world to travel through this world and go on adventures. That's when you start to draw in things like pirate movies and pirate literature and all of the things that make Sea of Thieves feel unique in terms of experiences you have. When you think about those experiences that you may have read about or you've seen in movies or you've dreamt about because it's your dream game, hopefully, it's not just about ships battling. It's not just about search for lost treasures. It's about overcoming perilous weather. It's about uneasy alliances with other crews out there in the pirate world. So all of these things speak to the variety of how these different encounters interact in that shared world. So the design philosophy essentially is that players, we've always seen them the same as the threats that the world throws at you. Players are a key part of the difficulty of Sea of Thieves. Like, players are a difficulty variable in terms of you plan out your adventures. While, of course, we want players to have adventures with their friends where they feel like it's just them in the world. They can have these rich PvE encounters where they're doing tall tales, they're doing treasure hunts, they're exploring kind of lost ancient vaults. They're doing all of those things, but there's always the chance and the unease of seeing another sail on the horizon, like you would expect if you were really in a pirate world. So that balance between having these rich PvE adventures while having the possibility of PvE encounters, that is what Sea of Thieves is. That is the heart of what Sea of Thieves is. So our players are at the heart of that. And the interactions between players are what drive those stories, because it's different crews, different players on different ships, each following their own motivation. Some players want to go take on world events. Some players want to go find lost treasure. Some players want to play the role of the hunters, hunting other players. That fact and that design philosophy has driven all of these smaller decisions in Sea of Thieves in terms of how treasure is physical. It's physical because it can be part of someone's stories, and it can be stolen. That's why it's Sea of Thieves. How the treasure cannot be stolen by any one person, that those rewards are shared amongst the crew. So that design philosophy has driven all of those decisions. So it, like, the fact that the world is a shared world is the heart of what Sea of Thieves is. Now, I totally understand why people would look at Sea of Thieves, especially as it's become richer over time, and almost at first glance you perceive it like an adventure game, as in it's a very inviting game where I can explore this pirate world and have adventures with my friends. But the special magic of Sea of Thieves is that you're doing all of that in a shared world. Was that as succinct as possible?
It's good.
That's good.
I recognise
Yeah,
I recognise quite a few lines as well from over the years. It's like you're on form. It's good. A sail on the horizon. Yeah.
That's the classic. That's
Another
the classic.
player. Yeah.
On the horizon.
It is. Uneasy alliances between.
You forgot to mention it was a swag though, like in our original pitch deck,
True.
wasn't it? It was a
great
shared
acronym.
world adventure game, the swag, the pirate themed shared world adventure game. Yeah, there you go. That was the acronym we came up with.
There's bound to be a ton of like new people who've come into Sea of Thieves who haven't heard that the kind of spiel that we've given for years before, because it tends to be in a lot of the kind of videos almost prior to launch or just after launch, and there's a lot more players in now.
I mean, we used to talk a lot in the early days of Sea of Thieves on our team, on the development team, around just a lot about player psychology. That no matter how you balance kind of emergent gameplay mechanics like storms, like the wind, skeletons, different AI threats, you can still start learning the patterns about how frequent they're going to be and how you're going to engage with them when you do encounter them. Whereas nothing beats the ingenuity and the creativity of real people. And that's the element that no matter what adventure you have, there's always that unexpected chance that you're going to be thrown into a story that you didn't expect. And that's the variable of real human players also playing pirate crews in that world. That's the magic of Sea of Thieves.
I totally agree. Like I was just going to say, like you took the words out of my mouth. Like when you think back to the early days of when we very first started Sea of Thieves, even with a very limited amount of gameplay mechanics and features in the game, the thing that made it exciting to play every time was just the idea of being in there with different players, with different personalities, with different motivations. That was the magic or the chain shift that basically always ensured it was fun to pick it up one more time and play it again. And then more mechanics got added, which, grew the potential for the stories with those players. But it was always encountering other players that was the thing that made it truly special.
Yeah. Thinking back to Technical Alpha, it was like, 3 or 4 ships? I think it was 4 ships in a world. And mainly the gameplay focus was on doing simple quests and engaging with other players. I mean, it was pretty stripped back. And you're absolutely right, Andy. It was that. It was the unexpected content and experiences that are driven by other players, and that is essentially that idea of players creating stories together. And I do think that is the reason, like Joe talks about all these lines that we've had over the years, and you're absolutely right. I mean, another line that we used prior to launch was, this could be someone's first multiplayer game. This could change perceptions of what a multiplayer game can really be. And like, the reason we said that this could be someone's multiplayer game is because on the surface, it looks like a cooperative adventure game. It is there's quests in this world, there's adventures to be had, there's an element of escapism in terms of how the game looks and the adventures it promises. But then that special extra is the fact that other players are doing the same thing as you in that shared world. So players might seek out Sea of Thieves because it's that pirate game they've always wanted to play, but it's got this special extra which makes sure that it's always unexpected in terms of the adventures that play out.
Still remember, like, the first time we'd been building the ship, and it was all so exciting, obviously, and all these ideas that we had for what Sea of Thieves was going to be. But the first time, really, really early on, where we actually got a network game like working, and you saw the line, the other sail on the horizon. And I remember when we saw it, and it just, your mind was, it was so inspiring of all the possibilities of what that was going to mean, even in its really early, like it was just a block like coming on the horizon, but it was so exciting. It is truly what makes Sea of Thieves really special and exciting.
Yeah, it's magic every time now, even when you just go and play the game, isn't it? When you see another sail and you just wonder, like, who are they, what are they doing? Or you see 2 ships battling in the distance with the explosions and the sound effects, and you're just like, I don't know, it just blows my mind every time, kind of thing. But there isn't really another experience like it, I don't think. And Yeah, I love that.
And I think it goes as well to that thing that one of our kind of pillars was a game that was as fun to watch as it was to play, and it also plays into that, like the something that is unpredictable is kind of far more fun to watch. So as soon as you put other players and other motivations in there, it gets exciting. Like and that's what really changes it. And it's why you see those types of games that usually are, including other players, at the top of a lot of the kind of watch lists on Twitch or YouTube or whatever it is, and it's because of that unpredictable nature.
Yeah.
And I think like that point of new players have discovered Sea of Thieves, and they may not have heard us saying all these lines before, and the journey we've been on to create this experience. I do think it's important when people think about why we've created the game we have, that both sides are there in a sense of equilibrium as much as possible. One can't exist without the other. It's not Sea of Thieves is just a PvP game, because the thing that you're talking about, Joe, when you see a sail on the horizon, in a game like that, you know exactly what those other players want and what their intention and motivation is, because that's like other multiplayer games where people are just there to kill you. Whereas if you see someone in Sea of Thieves, they may want to do that, but they may also be ferrying chickens. They might also be on a tall tale. They might be going to find treasure. They might not want that at all. Or they might want to do those things, but they might be up for cooperating with you. So I think it's all those different contexts that players can be in. Like, you can't have one without the other. You need it's a melting pot of all these different player motivations, and how players come together is what makes it unexpected.
I'm going to jump in with a quick question, if that's all right, because you've touched on a couple of things that we've seen asked about in our community. So, Shelley, you mentioned that there have been 3 or 4 ships in kind of testing, and then, Mike, you've talked about trying to balance emergent events and not knowing what other players' intentions are. How do we go about balancing how many kind of player ships are going to be on a server? And this is a question from Megaseth2 on Twitter. Will there ever be more than 6 ships on a server?
The good news is we're back to 6 ships, which is good news. We never want to take content away that we've added and experiences that we've added. But part of running this game as a live service and giving players new experiences is we inevitably will push against what we can deliver performance-wise. So sometimes we need to take the time to optimize what we have to keep everything running smoothly. We did unfortunately have to make the decision to go down to 5 ships momentarily. It was several months, but now we are back to 6 ships, which is what the world was designed for. So I'll keep this answer really short, so you're not just hearing my voice. But essentially, we kind of worked out this formula, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of having the freedom to come into this game, to embark on adventures, and then have the chance to encounter other player ships in the world. So we kind of settled on this number of every ship that we add needs around 12 square miles of space. It needs an outpost to cache in its treasure, needs multiple islands to go and visit in different contexts. I'm going there for a bounty quest, I'm going there for a treasure hunt. So the square miles of our world is directly informed by the number of ships. So we put you into an empty area. You've got enough time to go embark on an adventure, and you may or may not emergently come across another ship in the world. Devil's Roar is somewhat different to that, because that you never start in the Devil's Roar. The Devil's Roar was positioned as a like a perilous sea that you would choose to sail into. So that's kind of, we treat that slightly differently. But the core world, the size of that world, the amount of outposts, the amount of islands is directly related to the number of ships. So if we did increase the number of ships in that world, that would make people encounter each other a lot more, probably to an amount that we'd feel uncomfortable with. We'd have to expand the world to expand the ships. And we may do that in the future, but we have no plans to do that at the moment. It'll all become clear, but we plan to give people new experiences through a slightly different way, but keeping the equilibrium of the world as it stands at the moment.
I mean, we tried that a lot, didn't we? In the early phases.
Am I muted? Delayed.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Sorry.
Okay.
It's not delayed for me because I'm in the same house.
I was just saying, like, we tried that a bunch, didn't we? In the prototype for Sea of Thieves, where we would build different map sizes for different ship configurations and try and get to that formula of what felt right. And that went through hundreds of hours of play testing, where you basically have 4 or 5 ships in quite a small confined area, and there was just there was just no chance to do anything other than interact.
It was like the voting lake, didn't we? It was like a voting lake. You were just
exactly.
like out there, and there's just
no matter where you
everywhere.
turned or looked around on the horizon, there was always someone there, and it kind of sometimes put you in a state of unease, I would say, when there was never this respite for players to just go and do their own thing, go and have their own adventure, uninterrupted by other players. But it's a very tricky, delicate balance, that is, I would say.
It's because it's not a moment, is it? If it's happening continuously, if you can always see another ship, then it becomes less of that. Like Joe, you said, that excitement that you still get when that happens. It's because of that very fine balance of how many ships there are in a world of that size.
It's a super interesting dynamic, and I do get why, as Sea of Thieves grows and grows, and we get more and more players come in from all around the world with all their, like, everyone's different motivations, and also with all of the content we've added, right? In terms of there's so many different things to do. Some of them more focused around kind of bringing players together for competition, some around kind of exploring the world, interacting with the world, that it creates moments of conflict, and it creates moments of, and it can create moments of frustration as well when people have really different motivations meet in the world. But it's kind of the best of Sea of Thieves is when that plays out in ways that you don't expect, and you have an amazing multiplayer kind of encounter and experience. But then also we totally get the kind of feedback and what people, when people ask for certain, like, oh, I'd like to play it this way or this way, I'd like to have more control here and there. And it is things that we discuss and we talk about, right? And we think there's lots of different ways we look at feedback, we look at data, we look at surveys, and I think there's always ways that we can go and improve frustration points, like within the experience. And I know that one of the ones that I keep bringing up internally that keeps coming up kind of as surveys is just around the kind of the combat loop of, like, when you kill a crew and then they come back and you kind of kill them again, that almost that respawn death loop and stuff like that. There's work we need to go do there. We haven't figured out exactly what and how, but we will tackle that. Like, that will be something that makes its way up to the top of the list and we tackle. But the magic of encountering the players, almost, how do we push more people towards that? How do we push more people to kind of appreciate that and understand that, whilst also dealing with frustrations and having an open mind too, right, as to the future of Sea of Thieves. Like, we never want to lose what's magic about it, but, you know, should we have an open mind in terms of things we could do in the future to try and kind of open up the magic of the experience to an even broader audience, and to kind of to people of all sorts of motivations and how people want to play at different times? We should totally do that, but it's not as simple as going, we'll just do PvP and PvE servers and it'll all be fine, right? Because that is that is just a solution that might work for completely different types of games, but it doesn't work for what Sea of Thieves is and what's at the heart of Sea of Thieves, right? But there's definitely other things that we've talked about and discussed. So it's a supremely nuanced discussion, and one that has so many different potential things to do. But I think it's fair to accept that almost the best of Sea of Thieves can sometimes be the opposite of that, right? Which is those encounters with other players can sometimes lead to the most frustrating moments for some players. And it's like, how do we balance that so that it's more leaning towards the other direction as much as possible, and things, and how do we continue to tune and, hey, look at
I thought I locked him out, but he managed to bring him all down. Sorry.
An emergent encounter, the best of Sea of Thieves. But it is right. There's so much nuance. I know it's like, and I think we should be happy to talk about it and to kind of just share our thoughts now. Honestly,
I think that's, like, really important that everything we've just talked about in terms of what the heart of Sea of Thieves is and what's really important about Sea of Thieves, and we're talking on a kind of more fundamental vision for the game and the mechanics and how players experience it, but also something that's been inherent in the DNA of this project from the very start has been listening to the community, building it alongside a community. And when we started, we didn't really know what that looked like because we didn't have a community, we didn't really have a game. But even right at the start, we knew it was going to be really important to, like, we wanted to build it alongside players. We wanted to listen to their feedback. So I think that in and of itself is also as much part of the heart of Sea of Thieves as all of the other things that we talk about. So having an open mind on that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think PvE versus PvE certainly is a hot topic, and this is the reason we're covering it in this podcast, right? You know, if you go onto our forums, there's a mega thread that's had almost 500,000 views because it's something that people feel so passionately about, or just like to debate, because there's some people who just can see both sides and want to make sure that those sides are kind of illuminated to the wider community. But again, this is going to be a difficult question, so sorry, but also not. It's a good one to cover. Joe, I'm going to pick on you for this one. So a lot of the discussion around PvP versus PvE ends up with people requesting things like PvE servers or using private servers where you can get your mates on and you know exactly what's going to happen because you've got that kind of environment. This is from your old captain on Twitter. When are we expecting for private servers to appear more over the horizon?
Is that my old captain? Like,
Yeah,
I'm trying to think who that is.
Your personal old captain. He's coming for
Okay.
you.
Awesome. Hey, Captain. Good to see you again. So it's a tough one, and so we don't have a specific plan, and kind of back to my previous point, like we don't have a plan to just go, hey, we're going to go and do private servers and allow everybody to just go spin up a private server, progress their way to Pirate Legend, play kind of all the content they want in a specific, just a kind of setting like that. Like that isn't a plan that we have. Like we purposely, our kind of custom servers experience doesn't have progression in. It's actually about allowing people to create new experiences, kind of new things with the kind of the tools not rules kind of approach, right, where people can kind of have the tools and make their own rules and kind of do cool things that we sort of see playing out already in our community. So there's a kind of very different purpose for that. But we definitely, kind of Mike and I have had conversations about, like, just as we look to the future Sea of Thieves, like, you know, how do we deal with the kind of this kind of topic as a whole, honestly? And I think, back to what I said before, I think there are some things we can go to just try and make the sandbox shared world experience smoother as an experience, like all up, like, and the kind of that spawn camping loop is the one that swings to mind for me most obviously, and it's probably one of the ones that comes through, I think, most hotly, because it kind of hits on some of that feedback around player toxicity, like, is that toxic and things, and it's kind of, that's kind of on us because that's our loop and that's something we've implemented, and it creates friction between players in a way that I think we should go solve. But then further forward, it's like, how do we kind of deal with that feedback of kind of people wanting to experience this without that threat? Is that something we want to do? Like, is there a way we can do it? But I think the key thing is that we cannot compromise what is at the heart of Sea of Thieves, which is that it's a swag, right? It's a shared world adventure game, and the encounters with other players and the threat and the risk, but also the kind of the unknown of what's going to happen when you encounter other players can lead to some of the most memorable, some of the best stories, and the thing that makes Sea of Thieves most unique. And I think, you know, those stories are the ones that mean the most to us, I think, right, when we see them shared and stuff. We all know, we've probably all got our own examples of them. So that vision and that part of our just everything in the DNA of Sea of Thieves will continue to remain true, but we will always be listening and thinking about how do we listen to that feedback? How do we react? I'm sorry, like, I can throw over to Mike because I know that we've talked about stuff and he's probably got some kind of maybe clearer thoughts about that. But this is all just open thinking and potential future things that we want to do, but we'll never compromise on the heart of it. I think that's what we could always say.
Yeah, I understand why it feels like a controversial subject. I think for us it doesn't always feel that way because it kind of speaks to the conversations we've had over many, many years developing this game. Because you do talk about, you know, we're not, you know, everything we've said about the magic of this game. It was a hypothesis that we tested in a prototype, and you know, it made sense on paper. But we also tried things on paper, tried them in the prototype, and they didn't feel good. We've also thought, I know Joe's going to jump in with an example in a second. There's stuff that we've seen really positive effects of in a small audience at Rare. We put it to our broad audience, and it hasn't gone down so well. So we are far from perfect. It's about taking that feedback from the community. I do think the core, that hot topic of PvP versus PvE, I find it quite an exciting potential because it actually speaks to how rich our game has become. That some of our players are discovering Sea of Thieves and finding something in that experience where they can kind of take or leave the player part. So if we get over our egos of, but that's not the game we designed. Like, if you get over that, I mean, it does speak to the fact that the game is rich enough and it promises that escapism. They want to just have those adventures with their friends. I do think the whole PvE versus PvP debate is it kind of simplifies the game and it loses that core. I don't think it's ever good from a creative perspective to come at something and say, yeah, it's the game with this bit switched off, and then that's it, go package it up and go experience that. Like, my mind goes to, if you're going to take something away, you should put something back in and make it a completely different experience. I think to summarize what we're saying today, it's that the core vision of Sea of Thieves in that shared world, PvE, PvP, mixed together, creating those stories, that's the experience we put on a pedestal. That is what Sea of Thieves is. I'm going to get a t-shirt with that on, I think. But that is what Sea of Thieves is. But are there potential in the future where there's new ways to play Sea of Thieves that still draws you back to that core experience, but there's more sense that you can curate the experience that you want, and you've got more choice over how you consume the world. Sounds like something from a going to eat the world. How you interact with the world. I think that is something that I find really exciting. But it's not about just turning other players off. I think something else has to fill that gap to create that experience. And I do think there will be a way to kind of find some harmony between the two. But the core of Sea of Thieves will always be that shared world. It's exciting. I just think it speaks to how rich our game has become, and the stories and the lore and the world building and the types of things you can get up to. It's just a really rich world, and people find different things of value to them in Sea of Thieves, and that's amazing.
Yeah, and with the kind of the rhythm of seasons now that we're in, right? You know, we've launched season 2 with the barrel, the barrel. And we've got our future seasons coming up that we're kind of working on behind the scenes. But we have this rhythm of strategic planning right now, where we go through kind of every few months, where we kind of look ahead and we kind of look at what the season in the future is. We'll get together with the kind of the leads on the team, like Andy and Shelley, and kind of figure out what do we want to go do, what are the biggest opportunities, what are the biggest things that excite us. And so every few months we get to surface these big kind of ideas, potentially something in this space, right, that we can go discuss, we can assess, we can kind of be like, what do we want to do to tackle this kind of big bit of feedback or this big potential opportunity? So there's always a new chance for us to go and discuss this and figure out when it could potentially fit in, when we could go tackle this and stuff. So I think, like, I just find that really interesting and exciting, because there's always these big things we could go do to kind of evolve the game, and I think that's what this seasonal rhythm kind of gets us to. And I've talked about it last time about, you know, we're in that transition period of transitioning into how we really support the seasonal kind of updates, but we're really structuring and kind of moving our team around so that we're in the best position to kind of both tackle those kind of just the real kind of things of the rhythm of running a season, of really making exciting events that make the best use of the kind of shared world and the kind of opportunities we have with other players, tackling things like the kind of much mentioned by me, but the kind of that spawn camp loop and things, and figuring out how we do that, which we know will be a controversial thing. And any change we make to the core loop of Sea of Thieves, if we go and try and make improvements there, we know that that's going to be something we really have to test. We have to kind of get out there with our insiders. But you know, we're in a position where we've set ourselves up to go tackle things like that, whilst also making big, sweeping, shifting kind of changes to the game moving forward. Whether that's big systemic things or it's lots of little pieces, lots of little kind of mechanics for the sandbox and stuff. So I am so excited about the future and just what this seasonal rhythm actually kind of gives us. I think because every time we do those strategic planning sessions, like we talked about before, the amount of ideas, the amount of potential ways we could go evolve Sea of Thieves, there's so much scope. Like there's just
you could never finish this game. You could never finish this game. Like Andy and Shelley know, right? There's stuff that was in the prototype that there's a very small list now of stuff we had in our prototype that we'd love to. Definitely right up there. You're not a fan, Andy? You didn't realise?
Come on.
I like that one. You've got my draft emails, mate. If you
there's loads of there's stuff within the prototype that we'd still love to bring across. There's stuff in our game now that we never prototyped, and there's ideas that we probably would have prototyped if we'd stayed prototyping for long enough that we'd want to still bring to the game. But it's so broad in terms of it's a pirate world. We can do anything a pirate can do in it. Like you're never going to finish that game. But that's why that relationship with the community is so critical, right? Because the lifeblood is having players that love their game, are passionate about their game, that want to keep coming back to it. And like we can keep making this game, and as long as we have a thriving community.
Yeah, I think like having worked on a game for 7 years and to still be like fascinated by the potential for new features and mechanics and ways to change that game is is very unusual. Like, I can't think of a game I've worked on. Like, this is the longest I've worked on any game, but even games I've worked on for like 2 or 3 years, usually as they're starting to round down, you start getting excited about what's next and what we're going to go and build next. Whereas Sea of Thieves has got this unique formula where there's so many new ideas and layers that can just be added to it. Like, it just feels like this never-ending kind of part of cool ideas that we could go and do to grow and evolve it further.
So before we go on, I'm going to prod because Mike, you mentioned things that haven't made it in, and I know that everyone will be raging if I didn't ask. To be put designers on the spot right now, what is something that was potentially in the prototype that didn't make it into the game?
Andy, do you want to go first?
Go with miming one, right?
What was your,
I guess
what
there's some cool. I don't know how filtered am I on this. Can I say stuff?
Anything you want, and like, but include the stuff as well that made it into the design bin of shame or whatever it was that you had.
I can't remember them.
No.
I really can't remember them. The prototype was a great process because you basically had a very small team that was sat together and they were just all aligned perfectly and just coming up with cool ideas and just throwing ideas into the game like so fast, because we didn't have to worry about the visuals, the animation, all of the complex things that come with AAA game development. We could just kind of create this ugly little fun prototype that we could play daily and test out all these ideas. So there is a wealth of things that were in that prototype, and like Mike said, like I had this like email list going between like myself, Mike, Shelley, and Greg that was like things I want to do before I'm finished with Sea of Thieves, and it was like just this huge list, and like I've got highlights on the ones that we've actually pulled across, and it's probably about 75-80% of it.
Send an update round every now and then, and we there's still gems in there that I would personally love to pull across. There's still things I loved in there that we'll definitely never pull across. And there were some clangers in there as well, like Joe said. But name a couple of cool ones that I personally loved that I would love to see in the game one day. Selfishly, is the painting canvas, which was this item that players could equip where they could wield this kind of blank canvas. They could hold the right trigger, and then this little quill would appear and kind of paint back and forth with this like cheap loading bar, which we wouldn't put in if we did it. But when it completed, it basically took us essentially like a screenshot of whatever the player's seeing and mapped it onto that canvas, and then put this like really crass gold frame around it that you could then go and mount on areas around the ship. So we had like these things called mount points in the captain's cabin, below decks, and you kind of wielded them like a map. You could like look at them yourself, or you could show them to other players, like your fine artwork. Someone's getting eaten by a shark, and instead of like coming to help you, they'd be like, standing on the on the plank, and they'd be like painting a canvas of you like getting eaten by a shark, and then they'd hang it up in the cabin. But what was so great about that feature was boarding somebody, and this is like speaking back to what we spoke about with the fact that it's a shared world with real players. But when you boarded somebody else's ship and you were kind of rummaging around in their ship, you could see all of their paintings from all of the adventures that they'd been on, and you could kind of steal their paintings and take them, or you could like be saying, what the hell were they doing? Like they were doing this, that, or the other. That was fascinating. Remember near the end as well, we also put in that anytime anyone took a painting canvas, it went to like a shared location, and then the tavern would pull that down. So when you loaded into the tavern, you'd get 2 or 3 pictures, and you didn't know who took them or what they were. It was fascinating. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was such a, like John spoke about it, but like those watchable, shareable moments that that make it so exciting to watch on social media platforms, because you just don't know what's going to happen. That was a great mechanic like that. And then I could talk about this for like 100 hours, by the way. I'll give one more that I loved, and it's kind of related to something we've got in there already. But the harpoon gun, how we have the harpoon gun. When you blasted that and it attached to any surface like it does now, you could jump on the harpoon rope and tightrope walk across it onto like different and use it in any way that you could imagine. Basically, it was like this hugely cool tool that just unlocked so much possibility for exciting kind of action moments where players would be in a ship fight, and then they'd harpoon the ship beside them, and then they'd be tight. You'd see them tight.
Like wobbling
They're boarding, and then you'd like be trying to cut the rope so that it snapped, and then they'd fall into the ocean. Or if they managed to balance and jump across, then they could board you. You could use it to board like high places on islands with a bit more precision than the cannons. If it was like a real steep angle, you'd like slide down it as well, and like grind down onto your ship, which felt really satisfying. It's just like another tool, another feature that was just fun and playful, and yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that one day as well. But there's so many cool things.
Those ideas, though, with some such as I was going to just a bit of anecdote on the painting canvas, because it is a good one, but I think sometimes we're a little bit unfair to the prototype in terms of how it looked, but it felt fantastic to play. And I think we always talk about this, and it's almost just part of our culture now at Rare, but the little details and little details that matter. And one of my favourite parts about the painting canvas was, to Andy's point, you'd take all these memories and you'd hang them up on the wall. If you sailed through a storm or you're in a ship battle, all the paintings would just like so lopsided. But then there's a mechanic where you could just go back through, press X, and straighten them up. And like, why did you do that? And everyone's like, oh, we spent time on that. And I guarantee every single time someone would go and straighten those paintings. You can't live with it. Like that to me was like, even though it looked like the Playmobil set of what Sea of Thieves is now, the Lego set, it had those little touches that are still in our game.
We were obsessive about stuff like that, that attention to detail and trying to find things that put a smile on your face, things that were like silly, playful fun. Because they had a chance as well, other than being tilted, that they'd full on fall off onto the floor, and you'd have to go and pick them up and put them back on as well. Just like really like cringe thing to ask an engineer to go and do, because they don't feel like they've got huge impact. But I think that there's like a certain combination of those things that if you get them in, you get them right, it just clicks, and it feels like joyful and fun to play, and it actually encourages role play and like people to be playful within the world, and it kind of puts a smile on your face. It's cool.
That was the lens we were always putting on, was all the time we were asking ourselves like the question as a group. We would always be asking like, how can we make this more social? Is there a way to make this more connected? And things like that, like the fact that if you've taken your painting, you can show it like with the trigger to other people, you can hang it up, you can have a sense of pride. If you go through a storm, it gets a bit wrecked. It's all in that same kind of mind space. I think like we did. I was gonna one of the clangers because it's got a bit of a story to it though, but like I think even the stuff that was
I love that word.
The stuff that wasn't the stuff that we tried, like we had so much fun even with the stuff that was bad, right? It still makes you laugh, but it was all serving that purpose of figuring out what was right for Sea of Thieves. So there was nothing that was, none of it was wasted. It was all really good in figuring out. So one of the things we tried really early on, we had beds, and you could press X to like sleep in them, so you could have the sleep mechanic. And we were kind of thinking about expanding that more and making it have more.
I love it. I want it back.
So we were like, well, why don't we do tiredness? So you get tired. Like you would be going around doing your activities, and then this like really basic kind of blindfold would just come down over the screen as if you'd fallen asleep.
Like the black banners, but they don't kind of squint.
It'd be like that. So you'd be like trying to sail through a storm, and you'd just be falling asleep. And then you'd go onto the island, and everyone would be like, "Has everyone had their nap before we go onto the island?" And you'd be falling asleep while we're collecting treasure. And like we knew it was wrong straight away, but I think it also helped us realise that like you didn't necessarily need to have a mechanical purpose to things that were there for role play. It's okay to have a bed that you can just go and like lie down in, or these days play the lie down emote. That's still joyful and that's still fun. It doesn't necessarily have to be a meter that you're filling up. And I think uncovering that stuff was part of our early like exploration. But yeah, falling asleep was terrible. It didn't last long. As soon as we played it went.
For me, that's what was great about that experience though, because good or bad, it was kind of like this fearless approach to just try things, whether they were, your reputation was on the line with like the hailstorms or whatever. But like you got to basically like craft whatever you thought could add value, and And that kind of fearless approach, I think, is what got us a lot of the really interesting things that make Sea of Thieves unique and different to a bunch of games that are out, in the generation. But without that kind of space to be creative and to just try things, good or bad, win or fail, like I don't think it would be the game that it shaped up to be. Yeah, very, very happy with how that went.
It was a really supportive atmosphere as well. It was like a raised. It might have been a bit of a raised eyebrow at the hail from Joe, but generally, it's like we understood what we were all trying to do, and most of the time, the failures were just things that we laughed a lot about, learnt from, and moved on from. So
that's the thing. You always learn, though. Like you learn, like if you put tiredness in, you're like, oh, should we go a bit more simulation with it? Like has everyone had the nap before we go to Devil's Ridge and dig up a chest? It's like you find out very quickly, like, yes, it didn't work, but what didn't work about it, and how can you avoid that in the future things? Do you know what I mean? So you're always learning.
I did like, however, you could pick up someone who was sleeping and throw them overboard. Like,
like we had a couple of things like that when people were in like a sleep state, where they were kind of like a little bit vulnerable, actually, like picking them up or pickpocketing them and stuff like that. That was
pickpocketing was great because you'd just you'd open your eyes and you'd see Andy like quite far away, and then you'd close your eyes and open them again and he'd be there, and you'd be like, and you'd go, no, I'm not pickpocketing.
I'm just like adjusting the painting.
And then you'd open your eyes and all your stuff would be gone, or like one cool trinket would be gone.
I mean, when we made certain decisions about how items were going to be used in the game, about how treasure was thought about in the game, we had to go back to a bunch of those things anyway, and they no longer worked within that kind of format. Like we had to make some very kind of critical decisions about players owning items. Like initially, no one owned even the items in the game, so you didn't have your own compass, you didn't have your own shovel. The ship had a shovel, the ship had a compass. So the compass was like on the captain's cabin by default, and the shovels were like on mount points or in barrels around the ship. And then everyone would spawn in the server, they'd all race to their favourite item, pick it up.
Well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Chests that would randomly give you some stuff, and you go, oh, I got the captain's cabin key, and then you'd be lording it over everyone saying, I've got the key.
But people would kind of like race to their favourite item, pick it up, wield it, and then they wouldn't always share in the item. So you got these horrible situations where you're going to dig treasure and you couldn't really participate. So we made a decision to everyone has their own set of personal items. That unlocks the ability for customization as a result of that, which was obviously a huge part of that as well. But things like pickpocketing, they just couldn't survive in that world because there was nothing to pickpocket from players. You couldn't take their little wooden compass and steal it and run off with it because you couldn't take it from them anymore. But
just back to the point about the prototype phase, I think you're right, that absolutely the mindset, and I know I joke about the hail all the time, but but I won't go on about it. But
oh, please do.
No, like I won't. I'll let it go because I know Andy's got like I did go on about the night, right? But it was the fact that I think really early on, I think the thing that really sticks in my head was because you're still finding your feet, right? You're still finding what the experience is. And I remember someone telling me, I can't remember who, or hearing that we were going to be like putting in firing out of cannons, that you can fire yourself out of cannons. Yeah. Like before I'd played it, my eyebrow kind of raised. I was like, is that right on tone? I couldn't think about how it'd look or something and everything. But then like it's literally as soon as you got in a cannon and clicked fire, or someone fired you out and you were just rolling about laughing at it, it was like bang, that's our tone right there. And so it was that whole, don't worry about like writing a big design or doing this. It's more just like, let's just try it. Like on almost everything, it was like, let's just try it and see. And like, so you got into that rhythm of like, there wasn't really anything that was out of the question to kind of just like,
try, wasn't it? That it wasn't ever really worth worrying about trying it.
Yeah. So it was just, but that was the best mentality.
Proving something out was the best way of like reviewing it though as well, right?
100%.
You could put that down in a detailed design document and say, right, we've got this new thing about players being able to load themselves in the camera. It's going to have this beautiful arch and everything. You'd read it and just wouldn't feel inspired, or you'd have these prejudged ideas about them. But trying it in person was the proof in the pudding.
Yeah. No,
I remember the first
magic.
video of that. It was Iker firing himself out of a cannon and landing perfectly in a rowboat, like so far away. And he sent me that one evening when he got it working. I was like, yes, I cannot wait to show this to everyone.
I think all the on the surface simple mechanics in Sea of Thieves that can be used in all these, there's multiple of ways. Like that is an end result of all that iteration that we did in the prototype. And it might seem like the prototype's really simple and things get more complex in Unreal. It's actually the other way around. You start with something incredibly complex, and then it almost passes through that sieve of what delivers against those design principles as elegantly as possible. And even though some of these ideas, even now, I'm getting excited hearing about them again, but even though they might work in that perfect situation of a bunch of friends alone on a server playing together, they could lead to a lot of knock-on effects that we ultimately didn't want in Unreal. But as I like to kind of wrap that bit up, the main thing is, right, all that magic that we talked about, like enough of that has kind of passed through. That culture that we had on the prototype and fearless experimentation that has led to some of the beloved mechanics that we've got in Sea of Thieves, instruments and the way you interact with treasure and all of that stuff is a result of the prototype.
Yeah, and we will revisit some of those mechanics and get them into the main good for sure.
Well,
you heard it here first. I've got one last question just on PvP versus PvE, and it's quite a difficult one. But Mike, you sort of brought it really nicely back around to this when you talk about being on a server with friends. And I think this is something that we've kind of danced around quite a bit because we've seen the amazing applications of this and seen the not so amazing applications of this. But as a team, kind of where do we stand on alliance servers? Do we have any plans to kind of try and reduce them? Like, how do we feel about it just as a studio? I'll put that in the hands of everyone because I think probably everyone has an opinion on it to some extent. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective on it, like it's something we've always had our eye on and obviously aware that it's happening. We see the videos and some of the loot hauls that are clearly the result of alliance servers. And I think it's something that, particularly when we added the ledger system with the emissaries, that really brought it into focus. And it's one of those things where it's is there a way to dedicate resource to it internally that we want to spend on something else without compromising the experience for the broader player base? I think where my perspective on it is that we watch it, we see how commonplace it is. I think if it ever reached a point where it became really widespread, I think for the health of the community, we would step in. But it still feels like a very niche thing. So giving players full freedom is what we've prioritized for the moment. And don't get me wrong, there's some good stuff that comes from the Alliance servers, and some of the videos you shared are really cool. But it's something we've got our eye on. No plans to address immediately, but we'll keep watching that space.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because some people use it in ways that we don't quite think is right, but some people are doing it in ways that we think are awesome in terms of kind of like you say, the stories, the things they're having, the kind of getting friends together, and it's almost like we need to like observe and understand and kind of like really understand what the motivation is behind that, right? And what are the things they're trying to do, and they don't have the tools to do it, and it's like, okay, cool, maybe we need to kind of go and figure out how to expose and open those tools up, or give ways people to have those, to be able to accomplish the things they want that are really cool and fun and creative, but also thinking about the things that where people are playing the game in the way that we don't quite expect or understand, and maybe kind of gaming commendations or kind of doing things around the progression stuff. So it is nuanced, and but you don't want to just shut down one thing but shut down everything, and it's an interesting one. So yeah, but you're right, it is a fairly niche thing in terms of the grander scale of the audience, but we are always observing and discussing.
And I think what we would do is we rather than negatively trying to design something that compromises your experience to prevent it from happening, it's like, well, how do you, to Joe's point, how do you harness the motivation that players feel to use those servers and turn it into something a little bit that feels legitimate, that actually expands what you can do? Now, the idea of we've got this rich world with all these systems that interact. Is there a way in the future we could hand that world over to people so they can interact with it with a lot more freedom? Loads of potential there. Definitely factors into some of our kind of creative server discussions around how we open up the world to more people. But yeah, we'll get there.
So we have left the PvE PvP station, the bus station there, and we're transferring over to the fun bus, and we've got fun questions coming your way. Give me a toot toot.
Get Mike.
So yeah, I know, Christina, you've got a bunch of questions there from the community that are more in the fun category.
Yeah, just got a few fun ones.
Forced
So
fun.
yeah, from Nick, who is Apple Men Dead on Twitter. Are Duke and Umbra a thing?
Duke and Umbra. Yeah. Of all the islands he could pick to move in on, he's got to pick the one with Umbra on. He's like that person that sits next to you just trying to strike up a conversation. But they were friends, but not anymore.
Ooh.
To be
It's
continued.
a bit mysterious.
They were friends, but not anymore. Not
R.I.P.
anymore.
their friendship. That's sad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next. We've got, how high is the chance of the shrouded ghost spawning from Victor on Twitter?
Doesn't exist.
Well, we watched a video of this at lunch, didn't we, Shelley? Like
this morning. Yeah,
yeah.
somebody seeing it spawn. Yeah,
Somebody
doesn't
was like, there was like this
Watch
awesome Twitch video of somebody seeing the shrouded ghost and
What's that?
getting super excited, and then vanquishing it, and then I think they were talking about the percentage on that, weren't they?
They were,
I-
yeah. I was like, so that's right.
I was like, is that right? Like,
No,
0.02, is that right?
I remember that we put the number in really low, and then I remember having a conversation with Drew and Mike, and we were like, lower, let's go lower, and we pushed it, and it was a bit like, that's really low, but I can't remember what the actual number is, but it is very low. Very low.
Not that there's actually a number, it's just a really rare
occurrence,
ghost.
of course. Yeah,
It's just a really rare megalodon.
There isn't a shrouded ghost, Joe. I don't really
exactly,
know.
Yeah, there's no numbers, it's just really rare.
No numbers, but yeah.
Very shy and rare.
Actually,
Yeah.
According to the ocean biologist of the Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
If there was a chance, I genuinely don't remember the number or the amount of zeros on it.
No.
But it speaks to that
I do know how many were seen in a day recently, and I'm not going to say a number, but it was pretty low. Like in a single day,
Was it
the
one?
amount it was higher than one that was seen. Like across all of the people that played in a single day, it was higher than one.
And lower
was
than
it higher than 2?
We could be here sometime, but no, like there is the encounters are happening every day with the shrouded ghost out on the seas. Like multiple encounters are happening every day. So make sure that you're always looking through the spyglass when you hear that noise and checking.
It could be you.
We should put a distinct sting when you see it through the spyglass.
Yeah,
that'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
I'll write that one down, Mike. I'll stick that one.
Good on that. I like that.
Stick that one in there. Stick that one in there. No, it's a myth.
it's just a high pitched scream, basically.
Yeah,
It's just
Well, they're just
It's the voice clip of the pirate lord. Oh my god, you did it! You did it! It's you!
What's that on the horizon?
So another one, we've got, forget about the world event scheduler, talk about the wind scheduler, and how does it always know which way I want to go? And that's from Cold Sheep on YouTube.
Oh, that's a nice segue.
Which way I want to go, and it's going against them. Is that the tone we should be
I think,
reading?
yes,
that.
yeah, that is. Yeah, I was quite
Yeah.
cheery. I think it was like.
The way the system works, it checks what maps you've got in your radial, and then it kind of charts the position from where you are, then goes, yeah, southwest will block you there, yeah. Thought you were going to do that.
The wind was one of those mechanics that actually got, like Mike said, simplified from the Unity prototype. Like we did have wind strength was a thing. When we had the Unity prototype, we had gale force winds that are just, you'd be caning it down the sea, 45 knots or whatever. And we had this horrible thing called the doldrums, where the wind speed was basically like you're on a flat lake with no wind, basically, and you were just crawling across the sea, which was far worse than sailing into the wind now.
Yeah.
So we ended up simplifying it to kind of get some stuff up and running really quickly in Unreal, and never really went back to it. But I think that's probably for the best in hindsight.
Yeah. It's always nice when the players can still take where we came at it from was players can always take an action. You can almost tack around by taking almost like a counterintuitive route and then kind of coming back around as the wind changes. So part of the mastery is kind of using the wind, and sometimes it does kind of roll quite against you in terms of it's exactly where you want to go. But yeah, there's always an action the players can take.
Funny you should say that, Mike. We are currently working on an advanced tips for Sea of Thieves article. Watch out for it on the Sea of Thieves website. It'll be coming soon. Nice little plug there. Yeah, there we go. Lovely stuff.
That wasn't a plan.
We might mention wind. And then one final question, again from someone else who feels personally victimized by Sea of Thieves. Fantastic. Skellies with powder kegs. Why do they hate me so much?
We slowed them down, didn't we? We slowed them down. They used to go.
Didn't we slow down the ones with the big powder kegs?
Both. We slowed them. They used to go a lot faster because they were obviously they pop up quite a lot, and it's a nice little tension causer. We slowed them down, didn't we? So you've still got chance to evade them.
Remember when the powder kegs didn't have a fuse? And they were just powder kegs.
Oh, and they just blow.
Yeah,
just shoot them and blow up.
Yeah, but think about it. Like if you were a skeleton and you were cursed repeatedly to spawn on an island holding an explosive keg, like you would try and take as many people with you as possible, just to kind of spread the anger and frustration that this is your lot, right? So I think it's what we've done to them. They're just paying it back to everyone else.
We should make them laugh, really, like a high pitched laugh as they run at you.
They should.
Like serious Sam.
Change your animation.
Come with me. Come with me. Like that's what they should say. Like, just like, it's warm. Like, yeah. Just clip that. Stick it in.
I was not expecting that to go there.
That brought us to the end
That's
of our
my
fun
law
questions.
reason. Yeah.
That
is official law.
Fun questions, Christina.
Fun questions with Christina.
Fun questions, they were.
I only ask fun ones, obviously. Never difficult ones. You can ask everyone. Promise.
So please use that hashtag SOT podcast, SOT podcast on any of the social media platforms that you have to throw some questions across if you want to be one of those people who will now live in infamy on this podcast for asking a question. You could too be there one day. Remember as well to subscribe and be notified of the podcast if you're on any of the apps like YouTube. And yeah, just that's all we've got for this month or this 6 weeks. So thank you very much for everyone for watching, and thank you to all you. I know it's a really, really busy time. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and be on here. And Andy's parcel did not arrive.
I saw UPS go past at one point, and I was like, "That's it, it's coming." And I just.
So,
and which bus do we take home, John? Is it the Banter Bus or the Fun Bus now? Which one are we?
It's the work bus.
Rust around the window.
Yeah.
But you should tune into Andy's social channels, Kia on Twitter, to follow up of what this package was, because I think we're all excited to see what the package was. Is there a photo going on today?
I don't know if it comes. Maybe. I'm buying a new computer, and I've gone a bit silly with it. But, yeah, I bought a Death Stranding PC case from Japan, and it's taking forever to arrive, but hopefully it arrives in time.
Yeah, so this will probably go out way after your PCs arrive. So if you scroll back,
or maybe at the same time, who knows?
After it's been stuck in customs for 3 weeks,
or arrives in bits, and I have to go and buy another one.
But yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time. So remember, SOT Podcast, get on there, social channels, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you liked what you saw, then there's a wealth of content already on our channel, and there's lots more to come. So subscribe and click that little ship's bell for all those notifications. Cheers.